Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're very welcome here this morning to the Junction in Dungannon. My name's Paul Boyle and I'm one of the programme managers with the Special European Union's programmes body. Yes, thank you for making the journey. I know it's not been easy. Certainly getting out the street this morning was difficult. I'm just going to give you some of the logistics this morning and then hand over to Declan McGarrigle. So there's no fire alarm planned for this morning. If the fire alarm does go, we congregate in the Tesco car park. We allocated you badges when you came in, and some of those badges have purple dots, which is an indication that you're keen to find a partner to engage in the programme with. We've also flip charts outside the room as well, which you could leave your details on and we could share those. You could also, and some already have, send in the details to SEUPB and we'll upload your contact details onto our website. Agendas are on the table for today. The facilities are just out there to the right-hand side. There's also Wi-Fi codes if you need any of that. I'll maybe just point out that one of our speakers has been unable to arrive today. That's our colleague from the Department of Education in Ireland, Vincent. So we'll just touch on his slides a little bit and make his contact details available afterwards. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Declan McGarrigle, the Acting Director of the Joint Secretariat.
Thanks very much, Paul. And just to reiterate what Paul said in his introduction, just to welcome you all here today. It certainly wasn't an easy journey for me this morning in terms of the ice and snow, so I'm sure everybody was in the same situation. So you're all very welcome, and thanks very much for making the journey. So today really is a relatively short session on really introducing this area of the PEACEPLUS Programme to potential applicants. So I think this is now the 7th or 8th workshop that we've done across the programme in each of the various investment areas. And that support will continue, as we work our way through this year over the next number of months. So it's about introducing the programme, and I'll provide some context and some information on that in a moment. But it's primarily about the investment area 3.1 and the formal education element of the Shared Learning Together programme. It's also about introducing the pre-application support that starts today, really, for this area. And Myriam, my colleague who is working on behalf of SEUPB at the moment, is going to really be the primary point of contact for yourselves from this point onwards, as you work your way through elaborating really on your concept and your project idea in the weeks ahead. So Myriam today will also give an overview of the support that's available from her, and that includes one-to-one support and also then introducing the concept note process to yourselves as well. I'd also like to introduce Alison Chambers from the Department of Education in Northern Ireland, and Alison shortly will set out some of the policy context and the priorities and strategies from the department's perspective that the programme was built around and had to align with. So Alison, you're very welcome here today, and she'll give her presentation in a moment. And as Paul referred to there, unfortunately Vincent Landers from the Department of Education in Ireland has been unable to make it to the event this morning, but we'll make Vincent's slides available after today, along with the rest of the presentations, and there's also a recording of today's event as well. And Paul will just touch on some of the priorities that Vincent had in his presentation. I would say as well that we'll take some questions at the end of today's event, and there'll be ample time to do that. So please do make a note of anything that you need to ask us as we work our way through this morning, and we'll take those at the end. So in terms of the programme itself, we have been building and developing the programme really since 2018, and many of you will have been involved in the widespread stakeholder consultation exercises that we held really from about 2019 onwards. We also developed the programme in very close cooperation and consultation with the NI Executive Departments, the Government of Ireland, the UK Government, and indeed the European Commission. So as well as all of that information that was coming through in terms of survey responses, in terms of information that we were getting at consultation events, there was also a need, obviously, to align the programme with government strategies and policies, and also within the framework that the European Commission had set. The programme itself, a lot of it will be familiar in terms of the areas and the themes and the investment areas that we have. And that's because it's trying to build upon the impact and the experiences of the current PEACE4 programme and indeed the Interreg 5A programme. But it is one single programme this time round, so we don't have two separate PEACE and Interreg programmes. It's one programme called PEACEPLUS, and it's focused on peace and prosperity. So it's a renewed focus on peace and reconciliation, on good relations activity, but it's also about that prosperity angle as well. You can't have one without the other. So cross-border economic and territorial development is absolutely integral to the programme as well. So as I said, stakeholder engagement, we had well over 400 survey responses, and as I said, many of you, I'm sure, contributed to that. And we had a statutory consultation, really, that rubber-stamped the 6 thematic areas and the 22 investment areas that were developed under the programme, and that happened in 2021. The programme in its entirety was approved by the NI Executive, the Irish Government, and just last year it was also approved by the European Commission. So we're really into the phase now in terms of implementing the programme, standing here, starting to engage with yourselves around the concepts and the project ideas that you might have, and really you'll see that ramp up now over the course of the next number of months as calls for applications begin to open formally. And as I said, the importance in terms of engagement as well from our point of view with our policy departments, the accountable departments that provide match funding into the programme, and the 2 education departments, North and South, are absolutely critical in terms of that engagement at the moment as well. So the programme itself, the programme area is Northern Ireland and the border counties of Ireland, but you can see at the bottom of the slide that participation of partners from outside the programme area is also encouraged where it can add value to a project, and obviously then to young people and citizens and organisations within Northern Ireland and the border counties of Ireland. It's just important to note that. It's something that, if it makes sense and it works and it adds value, please do consider it. The value of the programme is in excess of €1 billion, and each of the themes and investment areas, and I'll show you those in a moment, will have separate allocations, which again are set, and when we go out with calls, and indeed during this pre-application support, it's something that you'll obviously have to bear in mind in terms of the allocation that's available under each of the areas, including 3.1. So there is 6 themes, 22 investment areas. So there's a huge breadth of activity right across the programme. And again, I know we're here today to look at investment area 3.1, and that's obviously the primary focus of today. But please do, as organisations, as individuals, look at the breadth of activity here, because there's a lot more that you potentially could get involved in. We have areas of the programme that are much smaller in terms of the levels of support, up to €100,000 in terms of total project allocations, for good relations projects, and also around cross-border activity as well. So there's that activity, but there's also then the bigger strategic, larger projects. Obviously today we're focused on some of that as well. So theme 3, which is empowering and investing in our young people, is where 3.1, the investment area 3.1, shared learning together education programme, and the formal element sits within the architecture of the programme. But, if you look at theme 1, there's a focus there, maintaining that focus in terms of local level projects, in terms of peace action plans. We also have large shared space projects, re-imaging communities, regional level projects, which again can be around education and young people as well, about good relations and looking at solutions to some of the challenges that society faces. Theme 2, which has got a focus on economic regeneration and transformation, and you've got investment areas there on skills, which is obviously relevant in terms of young people. Also around support for SMEs and smart towns and villages. Within Theme 3, outside of the investment area that we're looking at today, we also have the Children and Young People Programme, which is the Peace Youth Programme, and also the Youth Mental Health investment area as well. And we had a workshop on Tuesday at this venue on youth mental health. So again, that might be another one. If you weren't there on Tuesday, please do go and have a look at that as well. The workshop will be available on our website. And then theme 4, which is healthy and inclusive communities. And we've got collaborative health and social care projects, with a range of different activities there that will be supported. Rural development and regeneration, dealing with some of challenges in terms of rural communities. And again, then focusing and maintaining a focus on victims and survivors as well. Theme 5, which is supporting a sustainable future. Everything in there in terms of support for biodiversity, marine and coastal management, water infrastructure, sustainable transport, energy. So a whole range of areas really looking at the response to the challenges and issues around climate change. And then finally, Theme 6, which is building and embedding partnership and collaboration. So strategic level projects, dealing with some of the what the European Commission would call obstacles that would exist because of the existence of a border, and trying to look and plan in a more effective way on a north-south basis. And again, education can be part of that, but there's a range of other areas as well, health, transport, etc. And then, as I said, there's projects at a much lower level, up to €100,000, less strategic in nature. But again, I think trying to engage with smaller organisations and ensuring that they have their place within the programme. So I think it's useful, just some of you will be very familiar with this, but for those of you that might be new to the programme, or indeed programmes like this, just useful to touch briefly on what a project looks like in terms of its life cycle. And you can see at the top of the slide, really we're at the pre-development stage at the moment, or as we would call pre-application. So it's about really that initial sort of stage of engaging with the programme, seeing, does my project idea have a fit? Does my organisation have a fit with the programme? Some of you may be asking that question today. Some of you may be much further down the line, have been involved in the programmes before. But it's important to engage with us on that. We're looking at and wanting to see strategic projects coming through here in terms of this particular investment area. So how do you play your part in that? Do you lead the project? Are you a partner within that? So it's about elaborating on your idea, developing your concept note, and we have templates on that, and Myriam will go through that in much more detail later on. And it's also, as Paul touched on, there's opportunities today to network, to find partners, to leave your details. We've got a partner search function on our website as well, so please do use that if you need it. And then really the first big point really is the formal launch of the call. And that's what we're working on at the moment. We're working on call documentation, elaborating ourselves on what's in the actual programme overview document that many of you will have seen in terms of the various actions. So there will be further documentation, further guidance, further information. So this is the start of the process today, really, in terms of that. And then you would move on in terms of actually submitting your application, and obviously that will be assessed by SEUPB. We'll working closely with the government departments. And then if you're successful, then you move into your contracting and starting up your project, and then through to the implementation stage, and really making sure that you're implementing what you set out to do and what you've agreed to do within your application, and the various work packages and activities that you have agreed with us. So it's just useful just to note that and just understand what the life cycle is at that sort of high level. Today, as I said, is about theme 3. It's about empowering and investing in our young people. So it's been part of the PEACE programmes really since their inception, and obviously a greater focus even under the current PEACE 4 programme as well. And when the programme was being developed, what came through the consultations very strongly was the need really to allocate and maintain that funding profile that's there. So again, just where that sits within theme 3, there's 123 million euros available overall in terms of the theme, and then that's broken down into those 3 investment areas. And again, we'll go through in a little bit more detail in terms of the activities and the actions and the types of projects that we want to see coming through in terms of the workshop today. So that's just a very brief run through in terms of how we've got here, I suppose. So at this point, I'm going to welcome up Alison Chambers from the Department of Education in Northern Ireland. And Alison is the Director of Professional Learning and Collaboration within the department. So Alison, very welcome. Thank you.
Hello everybody, it's lovely to be here in person. There's a lot more meetings happening in person now, so that's really nice, and it's lovely to see so many familiar faces in the room as well. I'll catch up with you on the break. So I'm Alison from the Department of Education, and as was said, I'm the Director for Collaboration and Professional Learning. And I'm going to present an overview just in terms of how the department supports the education system in Northern Ireland, some background to shared education, including the progress that we've made to date, an outline of future plans, as well as the wider legislative, policy and operational context for this particular PEACEPLUS investment area, Shared Learning Together, which is around the formal education, classroom-based in preschool and school settings. There are a lot of slides, don't let that put you off. Some of them I will dwell on, some of them I won't, but they'll all be made available for you. Anybody that's a potential applicant, all of that information will be made available after today. So moving on, hopefully I'm getting this the right order. Yeah. So DE's corporate plan 2023-28 sets out the strategic direction and drivers of the department over the next 5 years. It's still in draft. It was subject to public consultation, and the department is currently looking at those responses and doing an analysis of those. So the content may be subject to change, but amendments aren't expected to be significant. And you can always refer to the outgoing DE business plan if you would find that helpful for the 22-23 financial year. Our vision, as outlined in the new corporate plan, is that every child and young person is happy, learning and ready to succeed. And that, too many pages. And that is set out in the acronym CHILD. So we're focused on the needs of the child and seek to underpin the delivery of outcomes reflected in the draft PFG and the Children and Young People Strategy, which I'll come on to shortly. So again, there's a lot of information on this slide. I'm not going to go through it in great detail. You can see the aims and enablers there. We've got 4 enablers which will allow DE to meet those aims going forward through collaboration, optimising resources, responding to issues and engaging extensively. And all of those things have happened throughout shared education process to date. So we're really just reflecting on good practice and reinforcing that as we go forward. It might look slightly different by the time this is finalised and published, but hopefully it won't look too different. This slide gives a high-level illustration of our main roles and responsibilities. Includes support from the Minister, contributing to cost-cutting strategies and PFG, delivery of education services, revising policy, implementing policy, adopting policy, our legislative process, management and allocation of the budget, governance, accountability and engagement. So that's just a really quick run through what the department in Northern Ireland does. And again, this is a very busy slide, but there for your benefit. It gives you a sense of the wide range of policy responsibilities and the breadth of activity which falls under the remit of the Department of Education in Northern Ireland. A couple of these are worth highlighting, given the links to the investment area 3.1, such as supporting learning and improving educational standards, with a particular focus on addressing disadvantage and narrowing the achievement gap. Early years, recognising the benefits of early intervention and development during this crucial stage of a child's life. Our statutory duties in respect of Irish medium, integrated and shared education, the Shared Education Campus Programme, the Northern Ireland curriculum, teacher professional learning, our learning leaders policy that helps ensure our education workforce have the necessary skills and competencies, and our responsibility around equality, which includes our CRED policy, community relations, equality and diversity. And just a little slide to refresh our memory around the Programme for Government Draft Outcomes Framework. Hopefully, when we have an executive again, we will have a programme that's based on a shared and strategic vision for the future, which aims to improve the well-being for all and is built around these 9 strategic outcomes that are on the slide. The work of DE and its arm's length bodies directly contribute to a number of these. Of particular note is the one around our children and young people have the best start in life. Everyone can reach their potential. We have an equal and inclusive society where everyone is valued and treated with respect, and everyone feels safe. We all respect the law and each other. So these are particularly the last 2 outcomes are of particular relevance to shared education. In terms of our role to date, we act as an accountable department and provide match funding for the programme. And this means working alongside our counterparts in the Republic of Ireland and SEUPB. And we work closely with agreeing programme themes, investment areas in line with our departmental priorities, and requirements around agreeing the text. And my very able colleague Fiona Hood, who's sitting at the table over there, is with me today. So she's responsible for managing the PEACEPLUS Programme in the department and keeps SEUPB on their toes, I would say, in terms of agreeing text. So the call for applications document, we'll also have a role in that, which will be published in due course. And we will be involved in the steering committee, which will take final decisions on successful applications. We'll attend the programme monitoring committee in an advisory capacity. And we'll also ensure that the Northern Ireland grant element provided to SEUPB is delivered in line with Northern Ireland public expenditure and regulatory requirements. Under the current PEACE4 programme, you'll see there we have 2 distinct projects, and you'll be very familiar with our shared education in the preschool sector, sharing from the start, and CASE collaboration through sharing in education. PEACEPLUS will support the new Shared Learning Together programme, worth in total €51.2 million, and this seeks to build on the success of our existing PEACE4 projects, expanding and amplifying what has gone before. And of this, €41.2 million will be put towards the formal classroom-based learning environment, with a further €10 million available to help extend the reach of shared education across non-formal youth settings. And as was referenced, that pre-application workshop was on Tuesday, as well as support for the youth sector capacity building. And we'll also be accountable department for the separate youth mental health and wellbeing programme investment area 3.3. So again, many of you will be very familiar with our shared education progress to date. We can trace our early origins back to the 2000s with the advent of the SEUPB programme, the Independent Ministerial Advisory Group, making recommendations in terms of how to advance shared education in Northern Ireland, followed by the publication of the Sharing Works policy in 2015, which sets out how shared education was to work in practice, and a year later by the Shared Education Act, which sets out the legislative requirements. We've had support from other funders, such as the Executive Office, Atlantic Philanthropies, and that helped to support the signature project around shared education, which supported people-to-people activity between 2015 and 2019, with around 370 schools, and those schools already had a history of sharing. And they've gone on to be supported through our mainstreaming programme, which I'll come to in more detail shortly. The PEACE4 programme, which commenced in 2017, allowed for further progress to be made, and that was targeted at schools and preschool settings with no or little experience of sharing. And as with all aspects of the education system, unfortunately the pandemic has had a significant impact on our people-to-people activity, but We did report in our last report to the Assembly in March of last year, that some 63% of all primary, post-primary and special schools were engaged in shared education funded programmes as of June 2021. So it's clear that there is an appetite for schools and other settings not yet involved in shared education to become so, and my colleagues at this table over here, Paul, Seamus, are working on a programme, Steps into Sharing, aimed at such schools that are at the beginning of their shared education journey. And this is also supported by an Education and Training Inspectorate pathway into sharing document. So from my perspective, PEACEPLUS represents a really vital stage of progression over the coming years. Essentially, it can be seen as the third tranche of funding alongside the Signature Project in PEACE4 to support the expansion of shared education alongside the opportunity to address other policy priorities. This is just a little bit of information about the Act, and it provides a consistent definition and purpose of shared education, as well as outlining the relevant powers and duties that are placed on public bodies. And you can reference that at your leisure. Both DE and the Education Authority have a duty to encourage, facilitate and promote alongside other named bodies. And the encourage and facilitate shared education also extends to other sectoral bodies who have the power to do that too. And the extent to which these respective powers and duties are exercised is examined every 2 years by the Northern Ireland Assembly. And as I said, the last report was published in March 2022. And it's available on the Assembly website for anybody that wants a good read at bedtime. So in terms of the impact and benefits of shared education, the slide shows it does have educational benefits, societal benefits and economic benefits. In terms of educational benefits, we have enhanced learning and skills development opportunities for pupils, improved pastoral and curriculum outcomes for children and young people, access to a wider range of activities, subjects and enriched curriculum experience, and teacher professional development opportunities and sharing of good practice. In terms of society, promotion of the equality of opportunity, increased confidence and social skills in our young people, friendships and improved attitudes, greater respect for identity and diversity, and mutual understanding and opportunities to strengthen links with parents, families and the wider community. Economic benefits are delivered through more efficient and effective use of resources, equipment, teaching materials, the use of our physical infrastructure, collaboration, innovation and creativity, and building positive relations, leading to improved community cohesion and peace and reconciliation. So, without exception, the evaluations emanating from the funded projects to date, which can be made available as well, while identifying areas for improvement, have demonstrated the positive impact that shared education has on pupils, on our school staff, on our leaders and parents and our communities. Other external evaluation data would support this as well, such as the Young Life and Times, Kids Life and Times surveys. They all consistently report the benefits of shared education. So the department is committed to the continued advancement of shared education, and this slide provides an overview of the envisaged long-term delivery, working towards a point where provision is mainstreamed and rightly fully embedded across the Northern Ireland education system. At this current time, we have the two funding streams in operation simultaneously, the PEACE4 programme, which will run until June 2023, and the mainstream shared education programme, which is funded through our departmental core budget. Those former Signature Project partnerships, which have high levels of expertise and experience in shared education, have already begun to make the transition to mainstreaming as of September 2022. And over time, the aim is, and I'll caveat this with subject to available funding in the current financial climate we find ourselves in, the existing PEACE4 and planned PEACEPLUS programmes will converge into a mainstreamed environment. And mainstreaming, put simply, have I gone too far? Yeah. Mainstreaming, put simply, is the process of moving formal shared education provision from time-bound funded projects towards becoming normal, accepted, embedded practice and part of core day-to-day education delivery. In light of the benefits of sharing and collaboration, we wish to ensure that all schools and other settings and all children and young people have the opportunity to participate in shared education. And the strategy outlines how we will achieve this. So we published the strategy in September 2022, and it was really very much developed on a co-design basis with all of our key stakeholders involving extensive consultation. We had a series of workshops and innovation labs on the mainstreaming strategy, and there was a lot of input from everybody that attended those workshops. So it sets out our vision, aim, objectives and outcomes going forward, and these will be relevant in terms of applications for this next stage of funding. And we have a series of high-level statements of intent structured around 6 key areas of focus: partnership and collaboration, capacity building, support and resources, communication, monitoring and evaluation, and governance and accountability. And you can see on this slide our vision. An education system where shared education, as I've said, is embedded in partnership, working across religious and socioeconomic divides, that delivers educational benefits and promotes this culture of inclusivity, respect, mutual understanding, contributing to community cohesion and good relations. So I don't think anybody would say that's not a good vision to have for the department. Just in terms of this slide, we recognise that mainstreaming is complex. There are key challenges, there are areas for development moving forward. We need to target the gaps in current provision. We need to enhance participation levels, focusing on sectors which may have been underrepresented to date. We need to strengthen relationships with families and communities, securing buy-in to shared education. So we're introducing the implementation of the mainstreaming strategy through separate delivery plans which outline tangible actions to be taken forward over the short, medium and long term with targets for completion. And good progress is being made in terms of the first year delivery plan, and we're developing our plans for the next stages of mainstreaming. Responsibility for this lies with an oversight group made up of a range of stakeholders, including DE, key stakeholders in the room, the Executive Office, for example. And the PEACEPLUS Shared Learning Together programme provides a crucial opportunity to support the further development of shared education over the next few years. It is vitally important that any new projects under the programme are able to demonstrate alignment with the department's longer-term plans for shared education, as I've outlined. This slide just provides you with some information about key policies and strategies. Anybody that's interested in making an application might want to allude to a few of these, not all of them. And there are key sort of policies and strategies, including New Decade, New Approach, Every School a Good School, the Fair Start Action Plan, Learning Leaders Strategy, as I've mentioned. This is not an exhaustive list, and I don't say that you have to go and read all of these strategies, but in terms of building an application process, that some of them may be useful to you. So, and I would just say, in terms of New Decade, New Approach, there are published commitments from the Executive to shared education that have been published in successive programmes for government. The NDNA agreement in 2020 restated this commitment to shared education amongst our political parties. To help build a shared and integrated society, the Executive will support educating children and young people of different backgrounds together in the classroom. Within DE, this slide shows you some of the most notable policies and strategies which links very closely to the formal education side of 3.1, including the Children and Young People Strategy and its supporting delivery plan. It's a significant cross-cutting strategy aimed at improving the well-being of all children and young people in Northern Ireland across 8 key areas. And outcomes associated with the strategy include a number which link directly to shared education and good relations. The Fair Start was mentioned on the previous slide, and it's really looking at persistent underachievement, particularly for Protestant boys, and has recommended 47 actions in 8 key areas to help to address some of these issues. And there's certainly read across to shared education within that as well. Every Skill a Good Skill, our overarching strategy for skill improvement, which we are going to have another look at in the near future. Learning to Learn, extended skills, targeting financial support on skills with the greatest proportion of disadvantaged pupils enrolled, allowing for the provision of a wide range of learning support activities outside of the traditional school day, as well as other interventions and strategies, and learning leaders, which I'm responsible for around teacher professional learning. And there's been a big element of that in our shared education programmes so far. Moving on to other key documents, worth highlighting some of them relating specifically to shared education. And again, you will be familiar with a lot of those. I'll just draw attention to the pupil pathway, developed in consultation with our colleagues from the EA, which is a resource to support teachers in the planning, delivery and evaluation of shared education, which is mapped to our curricular outcomes. This was published in 2019 and was developed collaboratively, as I said, involving a number of educational and sectoral bodies. Other programmes just to be aware of that are outside the department, the TBAC strategy, together building a united community, links closely with shared education and our CRED policy. It's under review at the minute, but we are working with our colleagues in TO around how we can better coalesce the objectives of both of our programmes, and they will also have responsibility for some of the activities under PEACEPLUS. And the executive programme on tackling paramilitarism, I've long said to my colleagues around the need to link and join the dots here in terms of tackling paramilitarism and giving our young people strategies to address and be able to resist being drawn into that organised crime environment, resilient paramilitarism, criminality and coercive control. So we're contributing to this amongst other things around projects with our early years settings, skill settings and youth settings. So those are two just policies and programmes identified out of D, identified outside of D that are relevant. This list isn't exhaustive either, but you might want to have a look at those. So that brings me to the end of the canter through. As I said, these slides will be available. You can peruse at your leisure in due course. Fiona and I are happy during the sandwich to have a chat, take any questions. In the meantime, thank you very much for listening.
As mentioned earlier, Vincent, our colleague from the Department of Education in Ireland, can't be with us today. His contact details are available on the slide. Vincent's asked me just to make a couple of points here about particularly the most relevant strategies to them. So this is the DESK strategy goal for Ireland, and some of the 2 goals that he's highlighted around this are detailed in this slide. He's also asked me to point out that the North-South Civic Exchange Programme, which is part of the overall programme of activity in this area, is of particular importance to them. So the fact that he's not here doesn't mean he can't be contacted, and his email address is there. So I would encourage you to reach out to Vincent if you have any questions or any points you want to make to him. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Myriam now to go through the details around the concept note and give you a bit more detail on the 3.1 the formal area.
Oh my God. I was worried about slipping on the ice. It turned out it was a bag. So, morning everybody. I want to start by saying I'm really delighted to be doing the pre-development support for what I believe is a really, really important area of the PEACEPLUS programme. I'm going to start by just looking and speaking about giving you an overview of this investment area first, and then we'll talk about how the pre-development support will work. So firstly, the specific objective for this area is to provide direct, sustained contact between children from all backgrounds through collaboration between and within schools, early years settings and youth organisations to promote good relations and enhance children's skills to contribute to a cohesive society. So as colleagues have outlined, there are two calls under this particular investment area, one related to non-formal education, the youth sector, youth organisations, and the other related to formal education schools, and that is the one that we are talking about today. So in terms of what we want to achieve through this investment and these activities, that is an increase in the number of children, preschool, primary and post-primary, those engaging with youth services, teachers, principals, practitioner and youth workers engaged in sustained partnership with those from different communities, socioeconomic, cultural and political backgrounds in a manner which will contribute to the attitudinal and behavioural change within school and the wider community required to build a more peaceful, prosperous and cohesive programme area. Okay. So in terms of the kind of breadth and range of young people and pupils we want to see involved, they should include, and projects should include, a reasonable number of both Protestant and Catholic children and young persons and representatives of our other communities and our ethnic minority communities, those who are experiencing socioeconomic deprivation and those who are not, pupils and young people whose learning experience can be enhanced through additional supports. But in short, we want to see the full spectrum of our school population and our young people in schools, so everybody involved. Okay, so in terms of the scope and range, so ultimately we are looking for increased participation within the education system here in Northern Ireland and the border counties across all those school settings. Primary schools, post-primary schools, preschool settings, special schools and the integrated sector. But I think important to emphasise at this stage that we are looking at large-scale projects which can deliver, if not all, the majority or a significant number of the indicators that are set for this area. And I'll bring you through the indicators in a moment. Okay. In terms of scope and range and the activities, we are looking, this is a successor programme. We have a successful signature project in PEACE4, and we're looking to build on some of the expertise and success in that particular programme. And in this incoming programme, we would like to see a wider involvement of the school community. So schools do not just involve the pupils, the teachers, but there are other administrators, there are parents, there are grandparents. So we're trying to look and see if we can get projects to kind of include that wider school community approach. We're looking at the incorporation of cross-community, cross-border programmes which will develop empowered and confident learners through innovative shared teaching practices. So the sharing of best practice. Alison has outlined the multiple benefits there of shared education. They're not just about the cohesive, obviously that is a serious priority, but they also can contribute to improved educational attainment. So we're looking at all those kind of best practice approaches which would contribute to that and address educational underachievement and disadvantage. Okay. In terms of scope and range, the programme this time can use the extension of the current geographical scope to include JESH and other educational, disadvantaged education settings outside the border counties of Ireland, in addition to schools in Northern Ireland which operate the Extended Schools programme. Okay. It can also include the development of diverse school collaborations through the exploration of wider social and civic issues of relevance to young persons 14 to 16-year-olds. And I suppose in this programme as well, we've had a very strong engagement from the primary sector in this incoming programme. We would love to see an increased engagement from the second level sector as well. So the establishment of long-term sustainable mutually beneficial relationships. So in terms of measuring change and what participation in the programme will look like, we are looking at pupils to engage in a minimum of 30 hours contact per year. And important to emphasise, this shared education means cross-border and cross-community contact. In respect of the outputs for the North-South schools exchanges element, it's anticipated that a milestone of 200 participating schools, and a target value of 500 new schools will be achieved. So I mentioned the programme is result orientated, and to give you an indication, so we have under this particular call, there's 41.2 million euros allocated, and what we need to achieve in terms of the output and result indicators for that investment is as follows. So 120,735 participations, that's pupils, in shared learning together programmes, and 1,761 participations in joint training schemes, and that relates to teachers. So that should result in 90,551 completions in terms of pupils and 1,321 completions in terms of teachers. And teacher schemes in this context means joint teacher professional learning, and in Northern Ireland that should be aligned to the learning teacher strategy. Okay. So in terms of indicative actions, obviously we want to see inclusion of preschool settings. So shared education programmes in the preschool setting should incorporate the principles of the sharing from the start model and focus on the wider family. Okay. In terms of school settings, programmes should seek to increase the number of schools participating in shared education, in addition to exploring ways to sustain support for some existing participating shared education schools. Okay. Again, we've talked about incorporating an element that would hopefully tackle educational disadvantage. So both in the preschool and school sectors, which would help the cycle of education disadvantage by supporting related initiatives which address the additional learning needs of pupils at risk of underachievement. Okay. And also again, focusing on the role of parents and how they can contribute to addressing that cycle as well. Okay. So in terms of how some of those actions can be complemented, we are looking, and based on the learning and evaluation of the current programme, we are looking for projects to include effective use of technology, so digital-based approaches, which will contribute to the development and sustainability of shared educational partnerships, particularly, I suppose, relevant in a cross-border dimension. Awareness raising, we're looking for participating schools to kind of promote the value and benefits across all of those indicators that Alison mentioned of participating in shared education. And again, developing new approaches, so collaborative initiatives which will enable stakeholders from all educational sectors to further develop approaches, so kind of best practice across those individual school settings. Okay, so having given you an overview then of the call itself, I'm going to talk to you a bit about how the pre-development and application support process will work. Okay. So the pre-development support process involves, I know Paul had mentioned earlier that there are people here today wishing to engage or see how they can participate in the programme with maybe larger partners, and there is a partner search function that is, involved in the process where I can see opportunities for people to work together. I will do my best to manage those kind of introductions. This is a chance. And this is a very new opportunity. It hasn't happened in previous programmes, and I think it's a very, very welcome addition. It's a chance for applicants to articulate and tell the funder what their concept is before the application process begins, and to get feedback on what that application and project is, okay, with the view to strengthening it. In some cases, this may not be the right part of the programme for you. I do know the programme very well, so if I see how your project can fit in with a different part, and I know Declan brought us through the breadth of the 22 investment areas, if I can see how your project area would better fit somewhere else, I will signpost you accordingly. Okay, so from today, in terms of how we manage the pre-development support process is applicants can complete a concept note. Okay, so from today, any organisation wishing to become a lead partner under this area may complete and submit a concept note for comment and advice and support from myself. So first thing to say is that it is a very concise document and it won't take you too long to fill in. It covers, it's like a high-level version of what the application will be, and it'll help you put in place the foundations of your project so that you're better prepared when this call opens. Important to emphasise, it is not a formal application form and it is not scored. This is an advice-based process. So I'm just going to very quickly bring you through, there are 6 questions within that concept note, and I'm just going to give you a bit of guidance across each one of those. We have capped, in terms of each of the questions, there's a 500 word limit. And I would ask you, if you can possibly keep to that, do. I mean, there is a challenge in describing, and you'll all be very enthusiastic about your project, but from our point of view, to really see the kind of bones of your project, it's important that at this stage you're quite concise. So advice is available pre and post completion. So if people want to give me a call or email me for any advice in advance of filling out that concept form, you are most welcome to do so, and people in other investment areas have been doing just that. I will follow up with anybody who contacts me, and in terms of concept notes, I will go back and give everybody who submits a concept note feedback, and the extent and the range of that feedback will depend on the detail of that concept note, but everybody will get advice and support. So the first question within the concept note is about telling us about your project, okay? So telling us about the need, how that's been identified, can you evidence that, what's the rationale? Very important, and all projects have merit and need, but in this context, you know, it's important that you embed the need for this project and align that with the objectives of 3.1. and what the PEACEPLUS Programme is trying to achieve through this particular call. Alison has given you a wealth of information in terms of, and Vincent as well in their slides, have given you the regional strategies and policies. Where you can, it's important to make a link back to those as well. That's helpful, particularly in this area. Okay. So, question 2 is about the output and results and how your project will make a contribution to those. So I've outlined the extent of the result and output indicators. So you need to tell us how many young people will be involved in your project, how many teachers, how you will manage their participation, how you will measure that change as well. So that's what question 2 is focused on. Question 3 is about the cross-community and cross-border nature of your project. This is a cross-border programme, and applications coming through under this call must have a cross-border dimension. So again, we are looking, and just to emphasise that this is a considerable investment across multiple schools with thousands of pupils. So we are looking, where possible, for projects of scale. In terms of the cross-border dimension, we need you to tell us how your project is cross-border, how it is open to participants either side of the border in Northern Ireland and the border counties of Ireland, and how it's been developed and delivered using a shared approach. There's been a cross-border development and delivery dimension to your project. Okay, so question 4 is about duplication and displacement. So very important that you show us how your project will not duplicate or displace existing funding in education, the 2 education sectors in Ireland and Northern Ireland. And if you have identified any potential issues, how you will avoid or mitigate those. Okay. So the 5th question is about your project partnership, the team who will be developing and implementing the project, and the implementing arrangements. So who is the project team, how many, who's doing what, and why particular partners are involved, what is their role, and how does their expertise contribute to that role. How are they qualified and experienced to deliver on the projects? How will you put, or what are the practical arrangements that you will put in place to support smooth project implementation? How the project will be managed, project organisational chart if possible. Is this a tested partnership? Have you worked together before? How's that learning been incorporated? Are all the appropriate policies and procedures particularly important when we're working with children and young people? So are all of those incorporated and up to date? And in terms of, again, we're thinking about a project of scale here. So the financial management and the ability to cash flow, a project of the scale, or projects of the scale we're looking at need to be considered, and you need to give us some information about how that will be managed. Okay. Question 6 is about value for money. So within the concept note, there's an opportunity for you to provide a very high-level budget with less detail that you'll need to provide at application stage. But it's important now, and value for money is a considerable scoring criterion under the PEACEPLUS programme. So it's very important that your costs are considered in the context of value for money. Okay. Now, in terms of the budget allocated for this particular area, it is, as Alison referenced, it's 41.2 million. What we've done within the slides is give you an overview of how that project or that budget was formulated, and that will give you some kind of indication of the emphasis we want to see on particular activities and sectors. But just to make you aware that there is work underway to develop a unit cost for this particular programme. Okay, so this will result in a simplified cost model, which will hopefully involve a cost per participant, and we will provide, and applicants will be provided with that information once it's available, but just to be mindful that information will be forthcoming. Okay, so just to say, and particularly as we are talking about projects of scale here, just to give people an overview of what a lead partner is undertaking within that role. So their responsibility for the coordination, coordinating the development of the project, submitting the application, and ultimately they're assuming responsibility for the smooth implementation of the entire project and managing that partnership for the life of the project. That will involve the financial management, so budget control, the development and submission of timely claims, cash flow, fund allocation to partners, and they are accepting the risk of kind of ineligibility or a failure to meet targets. Their responsibility for reporting and developing and submitting regular progress reports. They're responsible for communications, and that means communicating obviously within the partnership, but also communicating and publicising the project within participants and the wider community. They need to coordinate any training that's required, and again we've referenced particularly the importance of policies and procedures and safeguarding, particularly in the context of this investment area as well. So in short, the lead partner is accepting overall responsibility for ensuring the implementation of the entire project, and it is a significant role. Okay, so just a few things to bear in mind at this stage. So it is a great opportunity now, this kind of pre-development, pre-application stage, to really look at your partnerships, speak to other people, use events like this, use me as other applicants in other investment areas are to signpost you to potential partners if that's appropriate. Speak to other applicants. Avoid duplication across application. I think that's very important. I am seeing that. I'm working on a couple of investment areas, and this, under PEACEPLUS, I'm seeing much more coordination and communication across partners, and that can only benefit everybody. So we encourage you to do that at this particular time. Be realistic, and I say that in the context of a large, ambitious programme, but be mindful and be ambitious, but be realistic as well. Be mindful about the finance in particular. Important, and I know you're all obviously in the business of education and enthusiastic about this, but important to bed your activity back into what is ultimately the objectives for the PEACEPLUS programme overall, and this investment area in particular. We must have a laser sharp focus on peace building and bringing young people together. And my own experience of working with young people recently, my own children, is they have much to teach us when it comes to diversity, acceptance. We need to give them the opportunity to maximise their potential and to teach us how we can move forward as well. So let's give them the opportunity to do that. But again, in the context of the volume of young people and teachers that we want to participate in this programme, be thinking about how you will manage and monitor and measure that participation. Okay? Okay, so in terms of timescales, so the pre-application support process starts from today. So there is a concept note available on the website. You can download that. As I said, you can call me this afternoon if you so wish. I'll be available at any stage. You do need to return the concept note to us by any time on the 16th of March. What I will aim to do when you submit your concept note is to come back to you with feedback within 15 working days. Thank you. Lisa's the last one. Okay, sorry guys. And again, the level of support that you need will depend on the content of your application and the scale, etc. So we'll work that through between ourselves. But I am really looking forward to it, as I say, and looking forward to working with you. Okay?